So what do I do? I'm a CEO and founder of Olokun Minerals, and we're focused on mineral recovery from brine wastewater streams. And what does that even mean? It means that we're trying to find new sources for the critical minerals that we're going to need for the industries related to clean energy, to aluminum and steel, the building of the infrastructure for a larger population that is projected for the next 10, 50 years. So an example of something that we would extract is lithium, for example. We're trying to find more lithium sources so that we have basically more batteries for electric vehicles. So there's a huge push to have all vehicles be electric by at the most 2030. And in order to meet that demand, there's a need for things like lithium. Current ways that we get lithium are through hard rock mining or brine sailors in South America, and that's not meeting the demand. So when you think about supply versus demand in 2030, it's almost $30 billion worth of lithium that's going to be needed to meet what we think the electric vehicle demand will be. And so there will need to be more sources of that lithium. So we need to think about where those sources are coming from, and those are going to be unconventional sources. But we can find that lithium in things like desalination brines, geothermal energy brines. And so what we're doing is finding a way to extract it from those unconventional sources. And let me know if I'm going too deep into the weeds on the science, but there's different ways that you can extract these minerals. So different ways that you can extract things like lithium from brines include things like membranes. Ion exchange membranes is the typical name. An absorption process, which is basically taking a chemical resin and that resin reacting with the ions within that brine stream. And basically that resin takes the ion and creates a new compound. Usually it's a chloride compound. And then the extraction method is either the weight is changed because that compound is becoming larger and then can settle down, settle from that water at a different rate than it could have before, and it's easier to extract. Or it can be taken out through another membrane process. But you have ion exchange, membranes, absorption, and then lastly, and this can be categorized in a few different ways, but electrochemical approaches. So using electricity to actually separate or take out those ions. So you might think of it as these salts or these little minerals that are swimming around in the water. And how do you, one, figure out which little element that you want, but also how do you make those elements come together so that you have a large volume of that element coming out. And so what we're doing through our process, it's an absorption method. We're using something called a zwitterionic resin in a chromatography system. Chromatography is used in a number of different industries, most notably pharmaceuticals. So it's a way for you to separate out things that might be mixed together. Think of the color purple, right? The color purple is made of red and blue pigments. So this particular separation process allows you to take the color purple, in essence, and take out red and blue pigments so that you can see them, if that makes sense. And what we're doing is that brine represents that color purple, and we're taking things like lithium and magnesium, which would be your red and blue colors, and we're taking those out and making those chloride compounds. Once you get to a magnesium chloride or a lithium chloride, those can be sold to these markets, but you can also turn those into other compounds like a lithium carbonate or lithium hydroxide, depending on what chemistries are needed for the different industries that you're selling into. First, we have to think about the environmental impact of mining as a whole. I mean, a lot of people are focused on the oil and gas industry and the amount of carbon emissions related to the oil and gas industry. But a lot of our industries are dirty. Mining is no exception. One of the biggest ways that we get these critical minerals is through hard rock mining. And when you think about how do you get from a hard rock, spodumene is the hard rock version of that lithium that's needed. But to get it to a purity level that's relevant or can be, taken to the next step, a lot of times you burn off those impurities. And with anything, when you burn off anything, a lot of carbon gets emitted into the atmosphere. So the whole process of taking a rock and burning off the impurities and getting it to a point where it can be further down the supply chain is really dirty. And there's a lot of carbon that's emitted in that process. And so what we're doing is we're extracting it. Instead of getting it from hard rocks, we're finding it in these water streams, which allows us to basically extract it without having to burn things, which allows us to do it in a way that does not emit more carbon into the atmosphere. And in that process too, we're cleaning the water, or there's a level of water treatment that's happening. So not only are we extracting these minerals in a way that's less carbon intensive, we're also doing a secondary benefit of cleaning that water in the process. Great question. So to do this at scale, there's a number of things needed. And that my hat goes off to any founder in the hard tech space, especially doing something that's really trying to impact the community and trying to make the world a better place. But funding, we need to be able to fund the equipment needed at scale to basically take millions of liters or millions of gallons of water that have these minerals in it and run it through our system. So you need a piece of equipment that can take those volumes. And so building that is in the millions of dollars itself. So making sure that we have enough funding for that, but also to the research and basically the science that's needed to get the technology to a commercial scale is also important. And so we're doing a lot of research. We're partnering with the National Renewable Energy Lab in Colorado and really utilizing the resources that we have, the brain trust that we have within the US, and then also with some of our partners even outside of the US that we're looking to tap, but really focusing on universities, national labs to further develop the current technology that we're working on, and then reaching out to funders to make sure that we have the funding in place to, once the science is done, get that technology to a level where it can be in the world and be utilized by as many people as possible. So I think the concern is still around supply and demand. One of my favorite facts, I just want to start with this, is around the fact that 1927, which was less than 100 years ago, there were about 2 billion people on Earth. And when you think about in less than 100 years, we've quadrupled that population. And every single person requires water, requires a certain amount of energy that they need for to get the food that they eat, for the clothes that they wear, for the life that they want to live, right? So everything. And so as we grow our population, we also need to think about what are the resources that are needed for that person to have the same quality of life in 2050 or in 2021, 24, which is 100 years from today, that we see today. Can they have the same quality of life that we're used to today? And so with that, it's not only making sure that we have, or we expand our resources, which is what we're trying to do, go after unconventional resources and ways to extract those minerals or to source those minerals. But we also need to be more efficient with the way that we get those resources today. We have a history as a human race of being very inefficient with the way that we get our water, the way that we get the way that we use our trees for paper and other resources, and then also to the minerals that we're currently extracting. And so what we're trying to do is focus on a circular solution that takes the waste that we're producing and make sure that we are optimizing and really using those waste resources as much as we possibly can, so that there's less waste at the end, and then what we actually produce at the end can be recycled and used again. There's a huge push within the battery space to recycle batteries and use the materials that we've used in the past for batteries to be used for to create a new battery. So doing that same, or thinking about recycling as part of the whole overall supply chain for all of the industries that we currently enjoy today. So I'll say this in a few ways. One, programs like the Climate Impact Fellowship are a way to bring awareness, get our name out there, get our message out there to as many people as we can. So I think that's one of the benefits of being in a fellowship like this. I'll also say, we are doing a lot, or we're looking at community impact. How do we make sure that the communities that we're looking to serve understand the benefit, or what we're trying to say as a benefit for what we're trying to do? And that comes in a number of different things. One, reaching out to the younger community. So we've done some outreach. We used to be headquartered in Los Angeles, and we worked with a nonprofit in Los Angeles, basically exposing young women of color or girls of color to STEM, so the sciences. And from there, from the science lens, just letting them know, one, not only does this solution exist, but also that there's careers where they can think about these solutions themselves. And I think in that, realize that they can be a part of those solutions as well. What I love about Alexa, another climate fellow, is the work around environmental justice, and also making sure that the people who are going to be most affected by climate and the impacts of climate are a part of those solutions. There's not enough people that I see that are really creating companies, creating solutions that are going to impact the communities that they grew up in. So I think it's important for us, going back to your question, to at least make people aware not only of our solution, but the people behind that solution, and let them know that there are people that look like them that are trying to make a difference. So I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. One of the cases for these unconventional resources is produce water from oil and gas. And so as a startup, we're still in research and development phase. We're still doing a lot of customer discovery, understanding who all the players are for our industry. And so that led us to Louisiana. And we went to the middle of, I won't say nowhere, but we went to Oil City, Louisiana, which is a small rural population. And almost everything they do there is related to oil and gas. And one of the things that I learned from that trip, many things I learned from that trip, but one of the things that I thought was really impactful was, we in the climate space are trying to move away from oil and gas, or our dependence on petrochemicals. But there are whole cities where that is their livelihood, and that's been their livelihood for generations. And so what we're trying to do is look at the value of their wastewater. They produce 10 times as much water as they do oil in order to make that livelihood. If there was any way that we could make that water either as valuable as the oil that they're pulling, or even more valuable, depending on how economics change around these critical minerals, one, we could save their jobs, we could save whole communities, and their ability to provide for their families. We'd also bring more people to our side. It wouldn't be us versus them debate. It would be, this is the future. How do we get everyone on board? And it would also be something where we could make the whole oil and gas industry potentially the new way of us, or almost like the express lane for getting as many people on board to transition to this clean energy economy. And so we've started that process of understanding that produce water from the oil and gas industry, what can we extract and how we can do it. We're still in that process, so it's not a success story just yet, but the promise and what we see as the potential for this being a potential partner, I think is really exciting. And I think it changes the narrative of how we think about oil and gas. Instead of it being somebody across the aisle, our competitor or our adversary, thinking about the oil and gas industry as a potential partner. And if we can come together and work together, we can get to where we're trying to go, which is a clean energy economy faster. So how does an engineer intersect with being an entrepreneur? Engineer and entrepreneur. It's funny that you say that, specifically a civil engineer. In the past, especially with the tech boom, I've always thought of an entrepreneur as somebody related to computer science. And I've always wanted to build something in the real world. And I never associated entrepreneur or founder, the word entrepreneur or founder, with somebody who's building something in the real world. It wasn't until I really thought about this problem, this idea, which started out as how do we make desalination more sustainable? That was the first question. And then thinking if we did something with the brine from desalination, we could make desalination as a way to provide water to communities, and we could find a new source of these salts and minerals that are needed for so many different industries. Magnesium is used for aluminum steel, lithium is used for batteries, calcium is used for concrete. There's so many different things that people don't think about that exist in those brine waste streams. But I couldn't figure out how to do that within an existing company. So it wasn't until I came to the conclusion that I would have to build this on my own and started doing the tasks that people would associate it with an entrepreneur, raising money, building a team, selling a vision. Those all were things that I was doing, and I still felt disassociated with that title, entrepreneur. It took me probably, at least half a year before I welcomed that title. And it was probably a full year before I started feeling comfortable with that. I think people glamorize the word entrepreneur, but really it's about being a problem solver. And as an engineer, that's what we do. And so that's kind of, more so than being an entrepreneur, I think that I want to be associated with the word problem solver, and we need more problem solvers in the world. There's so many more problems than there are people who are working on those solutions. And so if I can be an example for anyone else, and if you want to call me an entrepreneur because that's glamorized, that's great. But really, let's get more problem solvers in the world. What I love about myself, I'll say, is I feel other people very deeply. And people would associate that with being empathetic. And I also want to solve problems, and I want to help people. And I love that I am currently in a position where I get to embrace both sides of myself. I get to embrace the fact that I am very sensitive to other people, and that I have this analytical mind, engineering mind. And if I can bring those two together, then I can really make the impact that I want to make on the world. I really appreciate Summit Impact, specifically doing this program for Climate Fellows. Not only does it highlight the work of so many inspiring people, and I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about the other fellows that are in the program, but it also allows people to, like myself, who would never come to, I see a lot of the work that Summit does in the creative space. And as an engineer, I've never felt like I was a creative person. And so I appreciate Summit having the foresight to be able to recognize a group of people that might be solving problems in a way that's very different than the arts or the entertainment industry, but finding ways to intersect and connect so that we can have the impact that we want to have on the world. Hi, I'm Lacey Reddix with Olokun Minerals. You can find us on socials, LinkedIn, at Olokun Minerals. You can also find us on Instagram at Olokun Minerals, OLOKUN Minerals, MINERALS. You can also find us on our website, www.olokunminerals.com. Again, OLOKUNMINERALS.com. And we specifically focus on recovering critical minerals from different brine wastewater streams. Think lithium, magnesium, calcium, sodium, creating compounds that can be used for the concrete industry, aluminum and steel, lithium ion batteries, paper, a number of different industries that make the world go round, things that we use every day that we don't think about.